Hello, everyone. This is Luis J. Rodriguez.
And I'm Trini Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'm also known as Miscoris Laquilo.
And also Tlasoteo.
And we have a very, very special program today. As you know, we bring a lot of authors, and Tia Chucha is always proud of the people we bring. And of course, the author we're going to introduce today, his book is available. So please consider going to tiachucha.org/bookstore to buy the book online. And of course, the people here who are here live can buy it here. He'll cite it while he's here. But we really want to introduce Christopher Soto. You want to say a few things about Christopher before then have him?
Yes, I don't want to mess it up. And I want to say it was so enjoyable reading this book. I saw Christopher not long ago at Mission College, which I was really so glad to see. And so after that, I bought the book, I read it, and I will read, to be just very careful. Christopher Rivas is an actor, an author, a podcaster, and storyteller. And he's also, this is very interesting, he's a PhD candidate in expressive arts for global health and peace building. And he's also a Rothschild Social Impact Fellow. So we have here somebody who's really, really important to hear from. And I'm just really, really excited that you're here.
And the
Thank
book,
you for
just so
joining
everybody
us.
knows, is called
Yes,
Brown Enough.
Brown Enough.
So Christopher,
Brown enough.
welcome to Tia Chuchas.
Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful for y'all, for this unbelievable space. I said that when I walked in here. It's like a portal. You pass a portal, and the energy is clean and also powerful. And so, thank you for making this.
So let's get into it a little bit. And I think the question, that one of the first ways to start a question is why you felt you had to write this book. What was really behind the compulsion to sit there and write a very beautiful book, I think.
Yeah. So the inciting incident moment in my life was I went to see Ta-Nehisi Coates. You probably have a book of his here, or multiple.
Right.
Brilliant man and thinker, creative, and he speaks about race in America, primarily black and white. And I don't know why I raised my hand to ask a question, but I did. It's something I still think about. Like I'm not a question kind of person like that in that kind of setting. But I did. I asked a question and I said, in this conversation of black and white, where does that leave me? Dominican, Colombian, brown kid from Queens. And he said, not in it. And that's it. They took the mic. I sat down. And I remember going to a party after, and I was just like not present at the party, and I couldn't sleep. And I was part angry, part confused, part like, maybe he's right. And I just let that live inside my spirit. If I'm not in it, y'all are not in it. Tia Chucha's not in it. My parents aren't in it.
Yeah.
Most of Queens isn't in it. A lot of the world isn't in it. And don't we all desire to be in it? Whatever it is, we desire to be seen and honored as full beings. So that would be the spark.
Yeah. When I read that, it's so powerful that first of all that it happened, and sometimes you think, well, is it just something that just happened and I'm just supposed to let it go? Is it me that's so troubled by this? But I'm really, really happy that you really took it in and really asked yourself, so what do I do about it? And now you're doing something about it. So.
Yeah, the honesty and the vulnerability is very powerful. People don't, I call it the race and identity mambo in this country. We're dancing around race and identity all the time. And sometimes it can be exhausting. Sometimes it's too much, but it's also very important.
Yeah.
How do you dance that delicate dance of race and identity?
I think part of that is just claiming brownness. Just claiming, hello. Claiming brownness. I know that as Latinos, Latinidad, we don't have a box. I know that there are 24 different nations and nationalities and countries and flavors and hips and styles that will never fit in one box. And so I wanted to sort of break that open and say, what does it look like for me to live outside of a box? And then that's where I embraced sort of brownness. It was this larger, more encompassing place where even in a world of he, she, it was the non-binary.
Yeah, that's right.
In a world of yes, no, right, wrong, it was like, oh, I can live in the middle and take up space in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful, to say I don't have to be one thing, I can be a million things. And sort of brown became that powerful thing for me to claim. And then just to say, like, there are more brown people probably in this planet than anything else. Like, you know, brown is a real spectrum, and there's a lot of brownness, you know, if we're just talking about the color itself. So that's how I navigate it. You know, I say I can't be put in a box, and I am brown, and I'm really powerful with my brown community. Yeah.
I think that's such an important thing that you're talking about, because really it is about having a space for everybody, where you don't have to be a certain thing in order to be able to occupy that space and be seen and be heard. And that's a difficult thing in this country, apparently, because it is about categories and boxes, and just trying to get out of it is such a complex thing. So I really love that this is, as it's described as both a memoir, but also just a social commentary. And so I wonder, what allowed you to take the risks that you did, to be as vulnerable, as truthful, really just honest about the kind of complexity it is to try to be in the United States the way it is.
I think I have a curse that's also a blessing. I'm very good at, so I got, like, a lot of my start came from The Moth. Do you know The Moth?
Oh, I love that, yeah.
So I won The Moth like a bunch of times, and I said things out loud to a room full of people that I never told people in my life. I don't know why I had this ability. I was more comfortable with performative vulnerability than I was with one-on-one vulnerability. So things I experienced with substances, like my parents were like, really? You know, but like people can watch it on YouTube? You know, like I had shared all this stuff. And that's just my own, whatever that is in me that, you know, like spirit gave me. I call it performative vulnerability because that's what my therapist named it, you know. I was like, I'm good at being vulnerable. I say this in public all the time. He goes, no, you wrote that. Like, you're ready to say that. Vulnerability is when you're not ready. Right? And then you have to face it, which is something I also love. And hope to keep my heart open to. But yeah, that's just been my, like, blessing and curse. Is I'm like, I'm going to say it all out loud while I have the opportunity. It brings me closer to myself. I often do this gesture, which is like, this is who we are, this is who we want to be, and the goal is for them to meet. And then we've arrived. And sharing what I know and what I don't know in an honest way, without a filter, brings me closer to myself.
I was, people should know that you're also an actor.
Yes.
And if they get a chance, they should look up Christopher Rivas, and you'll see a lot of places he's been acting on TV and films, just so you know how extensive. I thought it was very extensive what you've been through. But I love that section where you're talking about the mask, pretending. Maybe you might want to say a little bit about that, because I think there is something powerful there. But you, as an actor, also carries a certain amount of that, being somebody else, and then trying to be back to yourself. I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about that dynamic, the mask you've had to wear, the pretending world, and then you trying to be who you are as you are.
Yeah, I think we all have a million masks at home. We think we get ready with our clothes, but we also get ready with, like, who am I going to be today? Who am I going to perform for? What am I going to say? We pre-plan our days and our thoughts, and we have different costumes and capes, and I like getting to meet these different masks. in New York, I call it speaking. As a kid, I spoke multiple tongues. So I spoke street, I spoke white, you know, I spoke Queens, I spoke to my parents differently than I spoke to my friends. I spoke to someone I was macking it to differently than I spoke to, you know, my friends. These are the different tongues we carry. We carry them in the workplace. I carry them here. I carry them with my partner. I carry them with, you know, everybody. And so I also loved acting because I think I had this natural propensity for putting on different masks. Like I had an ability of being a chameleon of sorts. I talk about in the book like how I loved the subway. Like what a blessing. I got to watch a canvas. It was like a master class on how to be different people. You know, I watched white men carry themselves with the confidence of being a white man. Like and that taught me something that I could do on occasion. You know, I watched people be cool, what I thought was cool, and I could walk like them and giggle like them and lick my lips like them and wink like them. And I loved watching people. That comes from my pops. You know, my dad would take me out of school and we'd go to the park and play a game called Where They Going, Where They Coming From, Why They Walk That Way. And we would just watch people and you know, some might say judge them, but ask this question: where are they going, where are they coming from, and why do they walk that way? And that taught me how to watch people. He's a watcher. He is a watcher of people. There's people watching, and then there's like people watching and studying. Because my father also, both my father and my mother, probably like y'all, had to perform. In order to have this space, I know you did some performing. That probably wasn't always comfortable, but also brought you closer to yourself until you didn't have to perform.
Exactly.
That's very true.
And I like to imagine I'm at a place where I don't have to perform anymore.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah, I was going to just actually comment on the same thing. That what is it about art? You have some things that you say in the book about how art is that place that allows us to go to be expressive in a way that perhaps we're not ready to in the real world, but it prepares us to actually do that. And so have you found that that's been true for you? It seems that it has.
I think art's the most important thing on the planet. I'm so proud of being an artist. I really identify myself as an artist. I think art has an ability to break past our armor. We have armor when we walk into the world. Like even when you go to therapy, you have armor. You have to be prepared to actually have the conversation. You can go to therapy and waste your time and your money. Of course. You have to be prepared to be like, okay, I'll do it. You know, I'll talk about it. Art can get right past the armor. Not always, there's bad art. But sometimes you walk in front of a painting and you start crying. Because it sees what you weren't prepared. It found the crack in the armor and it hits you. And it reveals who you are. Relationships also do this. Romantic, but also French. People can see you past the armor. Special relationships. But art does that, and art did that for me. Performing has brought me closer to myself. Has said, I don't need this mask anymore. Or I still do need this mask, which is also okay. Like, knowing when you still got to perform, then that's what you have to do until you're ready. You know, safety is a part of this whole thing of getting closer to ourselves. Do we feel safe enough to truly be ourselves?
Yeah, and I don't mind repeating this story, but I told Christopher about why we named everything for my Tia Chucha, who was that so-called crazy member of my family that everybody talked bad about. But the reason why they talked bad about her was she really wasn't crazy. She was eccentric maybe, but she really wasn't crazy. She was very expressive. And she loved to paint, to do music, to do poetry, to dance. She did all these things. And in Mexico, as you might know, especially in the 50s and 60s, it was still real. a woman wasn't supposed to be that independent. And that's why she was who she was. A lot of people talk bad about her because of that. But she spoke to my spirit, whatever my spirit was. And I've honored that in naming this place, me and Trini named it for her, to honor exactly what you're talking about. Just be, the art is especially true, authentic, openness is who you really are. And the more you express it, the more you put into the world, you bring in beauty in all kinds of ways. And that's really the job of, I think, of a human being. You can do a lot of things as a human being, but art and beauty is one of them. It's not the only thing, but it's one of the big things.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that very much.
I've been thinking about beauty a lot. One, challenging ourselves to redefine beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Social media has sold us ideas of beauty that I don't think are beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think we have a responsibility on a daily basis to create beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say create, I don't just mean like making something new.
Yeah.
You can observe something long enough until you see the beauty in it.
Yeah.
And that is also beautiful.
Yeah.
You can make space for beauty. And I think in a world where people create lies, oppression, and violence every day, it is our responsibility to create beauty on a daily basis. I like it's Bob Marley. He was shot 2 days before performing at a peace rally. No, he was shot like as he was on his way to perform at the peace rally. And 2 days later, he goes back to perform. And they're like, what are you doing? You should be home resting. And he says, the people who are trying to stop peace never rest.
Right.
Why should I?
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful.
It is. Which kind of brings up this thing of that you're a candidate, a PhD candidate in expressive arts for global health and peace building. What is that?
Yeah, it's the longest business card in the world.
But it really sounds amazing.
I'm actually going back this summer. I took a break, pandemic, knee surgery, life. I'm going back this summer, which I'm very, very excited about. It is this incredible program in Switzerland that is all about expressive arts and art's ability, what we're talking about,
Yeah, exactly.
to heal conflict, to create peace building, art to bring people together, art to disrupt in a healthy way, to disrupt small ideas and small thinking. And so that's the PhD program, and I'm excited to go back. I registered 2 days ago.
All right, all right.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's
It
good.
is, it is.
I also love
Hello.
that you mentioned early on in the book about the medicine. And I think that's very powerful because we're all looking for medicine. And I like, and we at Tia Chucha like to expand the idea of medicine. We're not talking about your medicine cabinet. We're not talking about the pills you get from the doctor. We're talking about,
Often not medicine.
that's often it's not. You're
That's
right.
often,
Yeah.
you know, that's a numbing agent.
Yeah, pain management.
But the medicine we're talking about, I think you're expressing, is the medicine that comes through proper relationships, fully being expressive, being authentic, clarity in your life, which I think the whole book is about you trying to find some clarity about what it is to be Latino, brown in this world of colors and binaries, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's the important part of the medicine you're bringing in. Maybe you can say a little bit more about that aspect of what you're writing.
Yeah, I'll just read that part
Yeah,
really
yeah.
quick
Yeah.
with the medicine.
Yes.
I think it's at the intro. Invitation. I can just read the whole thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
An invitation. In this book, there is no three-step plan to help you better understand colorism, colonization, police violence, the student loan crisis, family love, or making it in America. I am not Oprah or Tony Robbins or even Ibram X. Kendi. This book will not make you rich, solve all your problems, find you a soulmate, or fix the world. I am not an expert because I am brown. I do not speak on behalf of all brown people. That is impossible. If I carry any expertise, it is that of experience, my experience. I was born this way, in this body, and I have lived this life to the best of my abilities. I know what hurts me and what helps me. Sometimes I avoid what helps and do what hurts, even when I know I shouldn't. Honesty is what I can control. Honest with the fact that I can deeply want things to change and at the same time be complacent in the actions that keep things the way they are. Honest with my confusion, anger, love, rage, disruption, hurt, lust, contradictions. Honest about how important and good it feels to see oneself and to be seen. Honest about how I am just beginning to discover a space that I didn't know existed until Ta-Nehisi Coates, a person some academics have called our modern-day James Baldwin, told me in a room full of people that there was no space for my brown body in the race conversation. Who would I have been had I known about this space? The next many years was me finding out. I didn't know which way was up, so like any good person in crisis, I started blowing things up in my life. I broke up with a great girlfriend because she was white, and I wrote about it in the New York Times, which ended up going viral. I lashed out at a cop, got thrown in jail. I accidentally radicalized a young Indian student of mine. I started learning Spanish. I started a podcast. I turned down jobs. I burned a lot of bridges. I booked a spot on a network sitcom, and I wrote stories about all of it. I was a baby learning to walk again, tripping and falling all the way across the room, and that's what this book is about. Good intentions, falling down, asking big fat questions, knocking things over, and confronting the truth. As James Baldwin declares in Notes of a Native Son, I gave the world murderous power over me. Yes, me too. Yes, anything to be seen, to be liked, to make it. I gave the world murderous power over me. Yes, I did. No more. No longer chasing a carrot dangling from my forehead that I was told would be some answer to some dream that wasn't even mine. No longer accepting a story that denies me my space, a large, diverse space that once did not contain me, you, us, a space that is actually what the global majority of the world is and looks like, brown, colorful, diverse. There's nothing new here. I am not filling this space or claiming it as my own, but simply moving through it, or letting it move through me. Even better, I'm letting it move me. And now, right now, I invite you to allow yourself to be moved. Moved to speak, to create rituals, to grieve, to take action. Action for the health of the community, which is everyone under the gaze of whiteness. Because someone needs to bring love, exposure, and vulnerability to our invisible world. Someone needs to turn the light on and say, my culture-filled, melanin-vibrant sisters and brothers, anyone who has felt left out or like their voice or actions don't matter, they do matter, you matter. And you can take part in this process. With all your shades, colors, wounds, scars, and tattoos, with all your varied melanin, with all your brownness, with all your vibrant color and whateverness, with all your stuff, all your trauma, your joy, your celebration, your history, and all the shit that comes with it. With anything and everything you are, will you join me in this space? There's no going back now. I am on a mission to find self, and maybe that's my self, maybe it's a collective self, maybe that includes my brown self. Maybe I will not feel so vague, confused, and questioning about my brown identity and where I stand or belong. Maybe I will move beyond the labels and tags, and I will find more space where I am free to actually be myself. Not this perfect self. Space is the Buddhist version of God. Space to me is peace and rest from needing to get it all right, and it feels like there is a lot to get right. I am on a mission to ask the questions and take the actions necessary to create more space that allows me to recognize and rest in this, my perfectly ordinary, everyday, beautiful brown self. Indigenous peoples believe that anything that restores balance is medicine. A good meal, medicine. Some tea, medicine. A hike with a friend, medicine. A nap, medicine. A good car dance, medicine. Young brown boys and girls embracing their gorgeous melanin, casting spells of self-worth, medicine, because the scales are out of whack and it's time to restore them. Will you join me?
Ooh, wow.
I know. I love it. I love it.
You have another question?
Yeah. One of the things that really struck me about the book is that it's quite it's highs and lows, and it made me cry a number of times, and it made me laugh a bunch of times, and it's I don't know. I think it's just the beauty of being real, and as when I heard you reading, I could hear my son Ruben actually, and there's just so much in there about the desire to be in a world that's different, that allows you to be who you are. It's such a simple thing, but it seems to me everything's arrayed against it. It is it's just so, it's disturbing. It makes me angry. It makes me sad. It makes me all these things. And yet, I think the answer is, as you said, creating space. That's why we created this, to have these kind of conversations,
space, yeah.
to be able to address things that are unsaid and they're taboos and they shouldn't be. And so anyway, I wonder, one of the things that we went over some ideas. Okay, so what kind of things can we ask? Because there's so much in that book. And one thing I wanted to ask is, the tendency sometimes when we begin to understand things that are really deep, to want other people to understand the same thing at the same time we do. And sometimes it can feel like weaponizing things. Yeah. And there's a couple of conversations that you had with your dad, some things that happened in the book. And I wonder, it's a difficult space to occupy, to be honest with each other, because people come at it with different experiences and different conclusions, and there's a lot of confusion in the process. So could you tell us a little bit about how that works for you when we're creating this kind of space?
How to create space, or how to,
How to stay in it, not to run from it too, because it's a difficult space to be in.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about space forever. It's like one of my favorite words. Safe space is a hot button. Like everyone's like, safe space, it's a safe space, and which I'm weary of any term that is used to sell me something. Like anything that's a marketing term makes me weary. But yes, safe spaces are important. But I like to think of space as before there's anything, there's space. Every creation, everything you love, every feeling, space preceded it. Every word in this book, first it was space. You were put in a space of discomfort, which gave birth to a form. You were put in a space of love, which gave birth to a place. You were like, oh, I have felt love. I have felt good energy. How do I put that into form? I create Tia Chuchas. Something birthed that you could put into form. How do you stay in a space of challenge or disruption or love or or authenticity? That's the work, I think, of your life. I think that's the work of creating beauty on a daily basis. The work of being honest with yourself and others on a daily basis. That's the work of being in a work setting and calling people out if you see something as inappropriate, if you're ready. That's the work of radical responsibility and radical honesty. It's practicing what you preach. I was with a friend this morning, and I don't think this gives anything away, but I was saying things, and she said, God, I tell that to everyone, and I never do it to myself. And I think everyone of us knows what it is to give advice that we do not take. Like that very simple therapeutic tool, which is like, would you talk to your friend like this? No. 95% of the time, we are a lot nicer to other people than we are to ourselves. So I think one of the best ways we can maintain a space of challenge and disruption and beauty and authenticity is to treat ourselves with kindness. And have the resilience to keep opening our hearts. That's what I define as resilience now, is how many times can you keep opening your heart in the face of something hard.
It's interesting that you bring up this issue of resilience, because there's a lot of discussions going on, thank goodness, in workspaces and in the community and so on, where resilience comes up, but it's usually the resilience of, don't give up and keep going, but without taking care of ourselves. The resilience of just surviving and thinking that's enough. But I think the point of the heart is really so important. A lot of our teachers, they tell us that it's you have to keep the heart part. It's not just up here; it's the heart, and that's the tenderest part, and it's the most important part. But it's hard.
In Buddhism, they call it heart-mind. Like they're not separate. It's heart-mind. You do things you think with your heart-mind. You move with your heart-mind. You think about your heart mind like it's heart mind. It's not heart. It's not mind. It's heart
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, I think we should probably open to others here in the audience and want to hear from you or
Online,
questions and comments.
Yes.
So I think what we're going to do is open it up here because this has been very powerful. I want to say one thing about space, especially safe space. There's still got to be tension there.
Yeah, tell me more.
And even with the balance, like indigenous people say, we want balance, but in balance there's tension. It doesn't mean, like she says, weaponizing, fighting, but you got to be aware of the acute tension that's there and let it happen, because tension is what makes life. And the problem is, what people think balance means is everything's peaceful and no, balance just means that you're aware of the tensions and you're making room for them. So I just want to put that out there, but really I want to hear from others. Let's see
I love
who's
that.
got a question or a comment.
I have
Okay.
Yeah.
I think your introduction really resonated with me, and the heart mind also. I think in medicine, from a lot of the readings that I've done right now, I'm reading Gabor Mate's current
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
Great. Yeah.
and you mentioned like,
Or the normal, what
The
is it?
Myth of Normal.
Yeah,
Great book.
great book.
yeah, and how there isn't technically and biologically and physically how we're constructed, there is no separation. And the world of medicine that we live in, the numbing agents, the substances, legal or not,
Right.
they don't do us the service. And I think when it comes to space, it's also space and community. And that's something I've struggled with in terms of like trying to uphold boundaries and being honest with myself. And then if shit hits the fan, it's like, how did I fail? Where did I fail? And so it's kind of always like rediscovering, and just because these people hit like 2 check marks, I'm taking them into my space, and that's a learning lesson. So, and then that you mentioned James Baldwin, I forget where this passage is from, but he's like, I have to tell the world how to respect me. It's something it's like, and then I think of like, but at what cost and what extent and how often and what is it going to be for me? So I think you hit a lot of those notes in that introduction, and I started hearing that because it's like, oh, that's heavy. That's all heavy. None of it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what you got to see on that, that's pretty powerful stuff.
I
there.
mean, thank you. I love that Baldwin quote. I'm curious what it's from. He has so many. I mean, he's he changed. I started writing because of him, and Eldridge Cleaver.
Yeah, yeah.
Soul on Ice and the Fire Next Time, which is so interesting. Ice and Fire. I started writing because of those two people. Those two books changed my life. Because it was someone showing me the world but talking about themselves.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the articulation then, but what I know I came to love was, if someone gets really intimate with themselves, they're getting really intimate with the whole world.
Yeah.
And the transparency of being able to share those two things, and the courage is it's healing. It's medicine. It's healing. It's a space. It's a space of tension, which can be a space of love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, this book has been really awesome for me because my parents are actually from Belize, in Central America, and sometimes I feel like I'm not Caribbean enough to be Caribbean, and I'm not Central American enough because we don't speak Spanish, and just not that feeling in it. And so by reading this book, I feel very much part of something. So thank you for that. And also, it's just wild that, culture say what he said to you. And I'm not an angry person, but I was very angry when I read that. But just the fact that I wouldn't say it helped to birth this book maybe faster than it came, but you know, that, like looking from that perspective of like, you know, stirring something up in your spirit to say, you know what, I'm going to do something and put it on paper and allow for other people to be touched and know that they're not alone. So thank you.
Thank you. It's all a win. You know, like sometimes that's a hard thing in the moment to realize, but medicine comes in a lot of different forms. Medicine comes in someone telling you you're not in it. Medicine comes in someone taking credit for your work. Like, you know, medicine comes in all sorts of ways. And I'm grateful for that medicine, like tremendously. And I also can believe that he said that, right? Like, because we have lived in a black-white world for so long. And nothing is wrong or right with, like, it's just the facts are our brains are really not good at living in these fluid ways, or else we would all be enlightened. Like, regardless of what we think about ourselves, we also put people in boxes. You're this to me, you're this. And when we can break that in ourselves, the world will start to do it, you know, in a way. I talk about in the book when my friend transitioned to they, their father was angry not at them, he was angry because he didn't understand. He didn't understand how someone could be two things. And I was like, I love that. He just doesn't, he's not mad at you. How he doesn't actually have the space, you know, to return to space to understand how someone can be two things all at the same time.
And I remember you said he was grumpy.
Yeah, he's grumpy.
He was grumpy.
Yeah. He's grumpy. Like, it's just, it was pushing against his own limited space. And that's what we want to put ourselves in, tension. We want to put ourselves in places that push against our own boundaries, push against our own walls, so that we start to expand from the inside out.
And one of the things I think about, and because Michelle's also bringing up the point that there is black and white in Latinidad, and brownness, but black is there, and so is whiteness. So it's all in mixed, and of course it's a battleground even among Latinos to be all these things.
It's a huge battleground.
It's a bag. So so it's all these things. But one of the things that hits me is that it's a dialogue that was created a long time ago, and I think it's a false dialogue.
Definitely.
But we're all in it. You know what I'm saying? When somebody said race was it, race, you know, that when the Spanish brought the casta system into Latin America, and all these things, the doctrine of discovery and all these crazy things that people come up with, it's all made up stuff. And white supremacy, which still is hanging out there, it's like, this is the dance we're doing, this is the delicate dance that God is doing. And yes, I think it's all important, and it's important to point out, here's my space, is who I am, but it's also weird that we're constantly in this dance. You know what I'm saying?
Well, at the end of the day, I say, like, you know, to quote Baldwin again, as soon as we put one person in a cage, we put everybody in the cage. And nobody's free until we're all free. Nobody's free until we're all free, which really means everybody, of every nationality, of every gender, of every class, of every quality, is under the gaze of whiteness, which is really under the gaze of about 5 white men who created, you know, the narrative of the world, who created the narrative of success, the narrative of hard work, the narrative of beauty. You know, so many of these narratives were created by a handful of white men. And so we're all in the cage. And we all have the key, and we're all keeping ourselves inside. We're thinking we're separate from it, but we're all in the cage together. Nobody's free until we're all free.
That's such a beautiful point. Thank you for that. Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I just want to comment. Your podcast where you feature stories of people and how you pronounce their names. And I love that.
Thanks.
So thank you for but I've always been a bookworm, but I've never walked into a space where I felt seen.
Hey.
And things that I could pick up and relate to. So
Yeah.
thank you for creating.
Wait, where did you come from?
I'm from Colorado.
Oh, yeah,
From
cool.
a very small town called LaSalle,
Yeah.
on the western slope. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I love coming here. I've been here a lot since I've moved here. So thank you for creating this and doing things like this.
So cool. Yeah, the space is amazing. The name episode was like exactly what I wanted that show to be. Those of you who know, the Brown Enough is also a podcast, and the name episode is all audience made.
Yeah.
It's all listeners who sent in stories about their names. Funny stories, sad stories, beautiful stories, learning to love your name,
Yeah.
hating your name, people mispronouncing your name, all the things that go into a name. So thank you, because that's the journey of where I want that show to go.
Yeah.
It's just people sending us their voice. So thanks.
Great. Thank
What's
you.
your name?
Carolina.
Carolina.
There you
Gracias.
go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Anything else?
While we're waiting, I wonder, one of the things that comes up in your book also, and it is, I think, very much related to the origin of something. And when we've lived with something for a long time, it's hard to imagine something else. But you talk about the importance of imagination, and just the I guess the space to imagine something other than what we have, so that we can build it. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I have a very aggressive term I often throw around called the genocide of the imagination. I think our obsession with content and always being plugged into something sucks up space. It literally takes space. And we need to imagine, you need space. Like actually. And everything that came into form came from space, right? Literally came from space, was imagined. Someone imagined all of these things. I'm worried that younger generations are not having the space to be bored, to be challenged, to imagine things that are bigger than them, to imagine things that are healing and transformative and medicinal and loving. And so imagination is a big part of my work, and it's actually a big part of something I'm creating in the future. And that's why I believe in anything that allows us to disconnect from content in order to be with ourselves and in order to be with our higher selves. I think imagination is also a form of prayer. That's what I think creativity is. Like, it's not just this. It's not just in a church setting. It's the ability to meet yourself and to meet your imagination, and to birth things into the world that need birthing into the world. Imagination is.
I think that's very important, but one of the things I also add to it is we need the fullness of it, because imagination is part of our culture, but they always tend to put it in a cage. They always tend to give it only so much time. Then they want to get to the practical things. The bottom line, let's get, and they don't give the fullness to it. And I think we need to have those spaces where imagination is given full reign, and then we can get to a point where we can say, what are we going to do with this stuff? But right away, the practical, what I call the masculine energy, starts interrupting and or dictating and pushing it out, because the imagination is not allowed to be really full, and just, it doesn't even have to have a purpose other than just being in there. And so that's a very important part of it, I think.
I also think, to imagination, the problem with social media is that because we qualify everything now in views and likes, we have a very small notion of what we believe success is. It must look like this, it must be that, because that obviously has the views and the likes. So that's what's good. That's what success is. That's what beauty is. That's what cool is. It has to be that. And so we think we're being creative when really we're just trying to duplicate what that is.
Yeah.
And being creative says, I disconnect from this.
Right.
I'm going to create, not create to have the views and the likes and the things, right? That's where new birth is made. That's where new, true imagination outside of form is made. Because if we're just trying to duplicate the model
Right.
of success,
Right.
you're in a vacuum that's actually just eating at you.
That's very beautiful, very powerful. Any other questions? We want to make sure other people can be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you address speaking on generational trauma with your parents?
Generational trauma? Oh, man. I don't know if you listen to the Rubirosa podcast. So I got to re-meet my parents in the process of writing this book, but I also I made a project about the Dominican man James Bond was based on, Porfirio Rubirosa. And I got to sit down with my parents and interview them about everything. Why didn't you teach me Spanish? Yo, Pops, why'd you change your name legally from Guillermo to William? Pops, why do you mark white on your license? Not from a place of I'm mad at you, you did me wrong, but like genuine, like, hey, look at what you did. Like, how beautiful, look at my life. Now let's sit down and re-meet each other. Not as parents, just as people. Like, you were people who were doing your best, and so no judgment here. Like, you did an awesome job. Let's talk. Because we don't talk to our parents, actually. Like, we don't take the time to meet them because they're our parents. And so when we meet them outside of the setting of you're my parent, but we take the time to like really, really meet them. It's amazing what can be birthed, what can be given. And the generosity of my parents to be honest with me about how they did their best, why they made the choices they made, was such a gift. So how do you, generational trauma, you talk to them.
Yeah.
You know, you re-meet your parents as people. And if they might not be ready also to give that back, and that's their journey, that's their time. Like, but something to know about all humans is that everyone's doing their best. Like, everybody's doing their absolute best with what they were given. Everybody. Including the people you hate the most. Like, everybody's doing their absolute best with what they were given. Which gives you an opportunity to do your best, especially if you're conscious.
That to me is important because our parents came in with a lot of baggage too, and we get really mad at them. But there's a level of forgiveness you got to have. It wasn't always their fault. Not that they couldn't have done something, and maybe you can jump on them. Why didn't you do more? But I know we always talk about our parents. We're very constrictive. Being Chicanos now, that's crazy. Being artistic. I have a story with my mom. I love my mom. But she thought it was a waste of time for me to be a writer, to be an artist, to be interested in these things. So I left all my murals. I had plywood murals, and I had others that I had painted on walls. But I left them at my mom's house, and I left all my writing. I had grocery bags of writing. I came back one day to get them, and she had thrown them all away.
Oof.
I know. And it's sad. And it's enough to get you mad. It's like, man, Mom, why would you do that? But over the years, I learned to forgive her. I kind of understand. She grew up in that world where you had to survive. She grew up picking cotton as a 9-year-old girl in South Texas. Everything was survival. You know what I'm saying? Everything was you had to work. You had to prove your worth that way. It wasn't about your real value. It's about are you worth? Are you worth something? And for a lot of especially working class people, it meant working. And if you couldn't work, what's wrong with you? So forgiveness, I think, is part of that. And I think that's part of you're saying, how can you sit down with your parents, forgive them for things that they had none to do, and even the things that they do, so that you can really have a good conversation. One that's not mixed in with a lot of that anger. I was angry for my parents for 30, 40 years, and I never hardly talked to them. And then finally, when my mom was dying, she actually had lymphoma, which went in remission, but she went Alzheimer's. And I started to talk to her before she totally lost it. to let her know I got no more issue with you, Mom. You know how I mean? It's like, Mom, I'm done, no issue. Let's just be mother and son for as long as we can. And that takes a lot. It took a lot, then I have to say this because my dad was even worse. And my dad had real sick issues, and it's in my memoirs. And I had to forgive him for terrible things that he'd done. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's an important part of seeing your parents and even your siblings as human beings caught in those traps that everybody is in, and then looking at how they have to maneuver through those traps, and some couldn't do it. Some were better than others. But I think the whole book is really about how you can do it with some dignity. And that, I think, is the important point.
Hopefully there's grace in it.
There is
there
grace,
is.
yeah.
I like the word grace, yeah.
That I was going through that process with my own parents. They immigrated over when they were in their teens in the 80s, and that was the height of the Reagan era. And my dad told me that he's like, I felt like I had to shed everything. And I'm like, oh man. My dad never spoke Spanish when I was growing up, but my mom did. So, but my Spanish isn't as good as I'd like it to be. And then, and also sitting down and yeah, you get older and there are more things that are appropriate to talk about, and like really seeing their trauma, like legitimate family trauma that to this day they haven't really worked through professionally. It gave me just, the thing about forgiveness is like you don't have anybody to blame anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so when I got to that point of being able, because I had a lot of anger towards my mom in my early 20s, up until like my early 20s, and I'm like, man, she's so mean to me. And then I realized it's just like, oh, this is probably a cycle that she and her turn out the sisters experience, you know, and then with choosing to forgive her, I was like, I realized I'm like, oh, I can't put my responsibility as her blame. Like I can't use her as a scapegoat anymore. I have to own these. Whatever she gave me is what I inherited, and now I can work through it because I have become aware of that. And like you said earlier, it's not easy. It's really painful, and there's still points like that I am still afraid to sit down and talk to them about that generational trauma. So it does. I think maybe in increments it happens, like in stages. It'll never happen all at once. That might be just too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can speak on that, because I know you talk about this a lot in your book. Also the shame that you have to shed. You have to shed some of
Oh,
that.
yeah, shame is a big one. We carry a lot of shame around our bodies, around our mind, you know, around the fact that whether we speak a language we think we should speak. I often say everything in this life is a story, one you've been made to believe or chosen to believe. Knowing the difference is profound. And everyone in this world is trying to tell you what you're worth and what you're capable of. And only you really know what you're worth and capable of. I really loved what you said about forgiveness means I can't blame you anymore. I take responsibility, radical responsibility. Nothing about the words I'm saying means that the process is easy, to saying that I have all the tools necessary to love myself. I have exactly what is needed to thrive. I have exactly what is needed to know self-worth. I have exactly what is needed to build my own Tia Chucha in my heart. But I believe that place exists where we get to claim whatever we've received, outside of good or bad, and to say, oh, I have been given a gift. I have been given the tools. Forget a gift. I've been given tools. Like I got a toolbox. I got this hammer. This is an ugly ass wrench, but it works. I got this screwdriver, you know. I got all of this stuff that was given to me that some people call generational trauma, and I am going to make something beautiful. I'm going to make art. I'm going to make people laugh. I'm going to love someone. I'm going to love myself. This is what has been given to me in order to make something beautiful.
I love that. Really quickly, I was telling him my story was I was a troubled young man on heroin in the streets and in a jail, juvenile hall. I was mentored out of that life. One guy who took a lot of interest in caring for me, even though I told him drop dead I don't know how many times, get out of my life. He never gave up. But I always tell people, because he said, well, he saved you. And I go, you know what? He didn't even know this, but he never saved me. He gave me what you just said, the tools, the resources, and connections so I could save myself. That to me was much more powerful. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't following me in the jails. He wasn't following me when I was on the street. But I remember what he's telling me. You know what I'm saying? How he was teaching me, showing me. He was trying to be real patient with me. And those teachings I carried, and I made decisions on my own based on what my mentor was constantly trying to guide me through. So I really find this very powerful what you're saying. And to realize that most of these tools are inside of you. Most of them are not really outside of you. Yeah.
And that's intimacy to me. The deepest intimacy you can have is to be honest with yourself. And to take the quality that you think is one of your weakest and to claim it as one of your strongest. And to say, wow, this is in this toolbox for a reason. It's time to fall in love with my guilt. It's time to fall in love with my shame. It's time to use it. Yeah.
Wow, that's
There we
really
go.
good. Yeah.
Question.
Go ahead.
I work with college students, and I think a lot of us as we get older, we go through self-reflection and self-healing. But I think of our young adolescents graduating high school and transitioning to college and not doing that, like not being ready for that phase, right? Because they are still in survival mode. They're still trying to conceptualize what intergenerational traumas, and none of that makes sense to them yet. So if you could tell your younger self, you know, your 18-year-old version, 19-year-old version, a piece of advice in relation to your career, like, what advice would you give yourself?
My 18-year-old self?
Yeah, like in relation to your, because I'm sure this wasn't planned, right? But
Yeah. I always say what I would tell my younger self is, the bigger part of this book is the word enough, not brown. It evolves from brown enough to just enough. And I don't wish, but I have an opportunity, should I give life into this world of humankind, to tell that person every day, you are enough, just as you are. You are enough, just as you are. At 18, at 19, at 20, at 21, you are enough, just as you are. You haven't done this? Cool, you are enough, just as you are. You still want to do this? That's amazing. You are enough, just as you are. You will do that? Yeah, you will. You are enough, just as you are. I'm still learning that in my process. I attach a lot to what I make, what I create, career, life, bank account, and I know so much of that is related to enoughness. And I know that when I feel most enough is when I'm truly resting. It's when I have the most energy. Because I don't feel like I have to make, do so I can be seen. It's like, I'm enough just as I am. I'm going to sit here and chill. That's rest. That's beauty. That's recovery. And so I would tell a younger generation, and the more this book is in the world, the more I want it in. There's a couple high schools who have been using it. We have this incredible study guide, if you know anyone who wants it. There's some high schools in New York and in Colorado, actually, in Denver, who are using it. Because the more it's out in the world, I'm like, oh, I wish I read this when I was 15.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, I wish I read this when I was 14. I wish I read this when I went into high school at 4'10", and I did not feel like enough. I did not I didn't like who I was as a little kid. That's why acting was so I could be something else, because I didn't like who I was. And I couldn't articulate it then, but I did not have this love for myself. And so that reminder, if we just tell people, you are enough. You don't have to do more. You're good. You are enough. If we start from that place, a cup full versus a cup that's a little empty, and then maybe someone will fill it up for me, No, if we start with an overflowing cup and we move through the world in that way, it's incredible what we might birth.
You know, just to remind people, the book is available. Obviously, we'll have some books here, and people will have signed books and stuff. But we also have it at Tia Chucha's bookstore, tiachucha.org/bookstore. So anybody that's out there in the world, please order this book. Order it for your classes. Order it for your friends. It's a dialogue starter. It's more than that. It doesn't really close the conversation.
Oh, no,
It pushes
yes.
the conversation. So that's what you want. You want the conversation to keep going, but you bring in some very important things that we're all going through. And I love the fact that you're finding a language for it, which is, I mentioned to you earlier, I thought one of the beautiful things about your book is you're a great writer. The writing is important. And having language for the kind of issues you're talking about is really, I'm so glad that you could do that. But now for the rest of us, read the book and also think about where the conversation can go in your own life, taking it further as much as you can.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, you have.
I have a comment, and that is, it kind of relates to what your mom said. There's this part where she explained that you have a choice when you have a challenging situation. You can either exit, you can neglect, you can persist, or you can voice, and then your choice was to voice. And I think it's kind of related to what was being brought up earlier about how do we deal with our personal challenges, also knowing that we have social challenges, so we can take care of ourselves and tell ourselves that we're enough, but the importance of taking the space to create another situation, where people are not so challenged. Yeah. So I don't know. I just wonder, because there is that balance, how to have your personal deal with your personal challenges, but also knowing we have some big social challenges. So
How do you deal with your personal, one more time?
how the connection between the personal and the social, basically, that there's challenges there.
Yeah, because I'm always thinking about self-help books are great. It's good to get self-help, but I'm thinking self-help so that you can actually be real in the world, change the world, not just change yourself. Somebody would say, I'm changing myself so I can help change the world. But I don't know.
Yeah, I have this conversation a lot with a friend of mine who's very into action. All right, yeah, he's like, self-love is cool and all, but what can I do?
Right.
Tell people to do something.
Yeah.
Give me action. What can I do? And we go back and forth with this because I do believe one of the greatest things we can do is get honest with who we are and what we want to see in the world. And that if we get to a place, ignorance is bliss until you tasted bliss, then the rest is just ignorance. If we get to a place where we get so fed up with white supremacy, with violence, with oppression, with lies, that we're moved, genuinely moved to action. Not because I think I should, not because it's the cool thing, not because it's the right. I'm genuinely moved to create change.
Yeah.
That only comes from getting honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Not helping ourselves, getting honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not even about being better or being happier. It's just like, be honest. How do you wake up in the morning? With anxiety or peace? How do you want to wake up in the morning? How do you go to bed? Do you sleep well? Does your body ache? Does your mind ache? Are you sad when you're alone? If you start to really have this intimate relationship with yourself, I believe that the actions you take outside of your alone time will start to reflect that. Those actions will be birthed from that true deep connection with self, I think. Because it's no one's job to save society. And / it's everybody's job.
No, you're right. That's absolutely right.
It's one soup, and we're all making it together.
Yeah.
Stone soup?
Right?
This is one big pot of soup, y'all, and we are responsible for how delicious and gross it is all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it is both nourishing and it is both toxic. And we each play a part in that.
Yeah.
That every time we watch Chef's Table while there's, someone hungry outside our door,
Yeah.
we are responsible. Every time we order from Amazon while the Amazon is burning, we're responsible. Doesn't mean we did anything wrong. It's just like,
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Yeah. Yeah, we're both individuals and we're both part of a collective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very beautiful. I want to make sure there's space. We're going to end pretty soon, but I want to make sure there's space for any other comments and questions.
I feel like
yeah.
there's a question right over there. You.
That hasn't done anything. No, I want to thank you for sharing your story. I stumbled upon you as an author not too long ago, and I'm so glad that I did. Hearing your stories and what you've shared, I'm getting emotional. Because there's something to connect with. Every single piece and part that's been shared. Ooh. And I think of myself feeling like it's mine now. Right? Like based on the color of my skin and how I grew up and I don't know if I have a question as much as just a comment, and I just wanted to think about like the importance of space. And like my colleague, and best friend over here shared, we're educators. And I think creating the space and empowering people of color that they are deserving of attaining education, right? And having them as capital and that knowledge that they are worthy has been one of the most remarkable components of what I do and what we do. And being able to take in your knowledge and what all of you have been sharing has been just inspirational. So thank you.
Well, I thank you for your work, both of you. I thank all of you, but I thank you for, educators are, underappreciated, underpaid, and some of the most important people in our society. So.
If I could suggest, I think the work that we do is specific to counseling or career counselors. Specifically work in community colleges to support students in identifying, right, their career. But we know that that's not a siloed experience, right? It's composed of where you come from and where you live, and so I think what lacks all of our career theories are created by white men, right? And it's this simplicity of you can choose your career based on your interests, and
Right.
there are other factors like someone being undocumented, someone being previously incarcerated. If your work ever gets to the point of creating workbooks for a career, I feel like it would be so impactful because it would take away from how we do it now, which is simplified. And there are some theorists kind of creating it, but again, none of it is conceptually communicated to students. And so I think when I do get your book and I read it, I'll have to reframe it through exercises that I can do with students to help them understand that. Like you mentioned, they are enough that they do bring something, because often students say, well, I've never had an internship. I don't know what that is. What's the difference between a job? How do I apply for time? We're dealing with everything in a post-pandemic and trying to humanize it in an environment where they're predominantly, even in community college, the faculty is still white, right? And so as counselors, there's more of us of color, but we're still dealing with faculty that have that mentality of just pick up the six straps, you should be able to buy that So that would be my wish to the universe, is that we would consider you all some work making something that we can integrate for our, specifically our community college students, because we serve the most diverse students in the world. And I think they're the most beautiful people I've ever
And what colleges you guys are at?
I'm currently at Valley College.
Yeah.
Valley College.
And I've been at College of Canyon
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Elsinore College of Lancaster.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Good. Good.
Thank you. Yeah, I will consider it.
But yeah. But I want to say how much medicine you gave us both with just now. The tears, but also the sentiments, but also those words.
Honesty.
And honesty. So I think this is really what we're saying. We're expanding the ways that we can heal and find healing in each other, find healing wherever we can be. That we be healing human beings, because we're trying to heal the world too, but it's hard for us when we're just carrying so much pain, trauma, remembrance, lack of remembrance, all these things. So I really appreciate it. It's really beautiful that you were able to speak and the courage for you to just be there. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're almost done here, but I wanted to see if there's any last minute comments maybe
Anything
you
else?
might have, or you, Christopher, you want to
Me?
say? Yeah.
Oh, no, I have tremendous gratitude. These spaces remind me the importance of being seen and making space to be seen.
Yeah.
What we all desire is to know that we are beings of infinite worth. And it's amazing how the world is not built to give us that.
Yeah.
One part is the myth of survival and the myth of success. But creating space where we can separate success and survival and just arrive and know that each one of us is of infinite worth is really powerful. And so I thank you for making this space literal, figuratively, for myself, for others, and for your community. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any last minute words, Trini? Or?
No, I just enjoyed it so much.
It was really good.
Very, very much
you.
so. Thank you all for
Yeah.
participating and opening your hearts too.
Yeah, and so for everybody that's out there in the world, please get this book. Invite Christopher if you get a chance. Whatever you can do to keep that important dialogue going, keep this conversation going. We want to thank you on behalf of Tia Chucha, Centro Cultural and Bookstore.
Thanks.
All right.
My son doesn't read. Thank you.
It was like